Chatham County Superior Court Judge Eugene Gadsden and Dr. Ida Gadsden left an indelible imprint on our community in their respective areas. They were a force for good and gave willingly of themselves to further what was right. To tell their story are those who knew them well.
I'm the daughter of the Honorable Eugene H. Gadsden and Dr. Ida J. Gadsden.
I'm their son.
My parents were both born in Savannah. His father, Robert Washington Gadsden, was a school principal for 48 years here.
Well, there's a school named after my grandfather, R.W. Gadsden Elementary School.
My mother and father both are products of the school system here. They went to what was known as Kyler Beach. My father always loved my mom, so he kind of pursued her.
When she became acquainted with my father, she was not very fond of him.
He finally won her over on a boat ride they took one time. And you know, she was so impressed with his manner. She taught at Kyler Beach. And among her jobs when she was a young woman, she would deliver telegrams, unfortunately, of soldiers who passed away to the families. That was one of the tragic jobs she had.
My mother, it was God first, family, hard work ethic, and to serve others. We had an open ditch across the street, and the prisoners would come and clean it out on a yearly basis. My mother would make Kool-Aid sandwiches and take them out to them.
When I was born 6 years into their marriage, at that time we were living in Yamacraw Village.
And he said what drove him to law school was his work as superintendent of the Yamacraw Housing Project.
There was no law school in the state of Georgia that he could attend, so he had to go to North Carolina A&T.
And he was hired with the firm of William Marsh. They were doing a lot of civil rights work in North Carolina at that time, and he actually got to present before the Supreme Court.
My father was offered the head chief counsel position at North Carolina Mutual, turned it down because he and my mother wanted to return to Savannah.
As the first black attorney in modern day times in Savannah, Judge Gadsden was a mentor for many black attorneys and some whites as well.
He was a loyal supporter of the NAACP and provided free legal work for the NAACP over a number of years.
Because he was a lawyer and he was rubbing elbows with all of the politicians in town, he knew their character, he knew what they stood for, he knew whether or not they would make commitments to enhance the black community.
The Political Advisory Council would prepare a sample ballot of advising the African American community on the candidates that the council members thought was the best for that community.
Back then, if you were not endorsed by the Political Action Committee, you could run, but you couldn't win.
The Political Action Committee was extremely influential, and Judge Gadsden was the unquestioned leader.
You don't have to go back but a very few years, and we had no African Americans, no blacks on city council at all.
Because the practice in the day was to run slates, and they would say city council had the mayor and 8 aldermen. They would select the 8 aldermen, and the mayor would run as a slate.
The whole idea was we needed people to represent us at City Hall, at the state capitol, and wherever that could represent the black community.
And the very first African American to serve on city council was Bowles Ford. And that was the work of Gene Gadsden. You can say he integrated city council.
I would call him the dean of the political community.
Gene was the peacemaker. He kept us informed, when I say us, the black community, and he worked tirelessly with the white community to make certain they understood the needs of the black community. And so he's responsible for why we didn't have the riots and all the things that you had in some of the other southern cities.
And of course, the demonstration were, that wasn't it. We always had the cases of Brown versus Board of Education. All of that started under NAACP, and he was filing Stell versus the Board of Education.
And they filed a federal suit against the Savannah-Chatham County public school system to desegregate the schools.
Back in the early 1960s, Judge Gadsden represented 6 young black men here in Savannah who were arrested for, believe it or not, playing basketball on public courts in Daffin Park. His representation here in Savannah led to the successful defense of those young men when the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where Nathaniel Wright versus State of Georgia was ruled null and void, allowing blacks to not only play basketball in Daffin Park, but swim in the pool at Daffin Park and to go in Daffin Park.
If he could work on anything as it relates to injustice behind the scene, he made it happen. He seldom have ever wanted credit for anything that he was doing. And that's what I was so impressed with. And that's why I went to bat to make certain that he got appointed to Superior Court.
He became a judge. Well, he couldn't be involved in politics after that.
And he is so respected that when he became judge, it was often said that if you appeared before Judge Gadsden, you were guaranteed that you'd get a fair shake in life.
When I was a young lawyer, just starting out, often finding myself in front of the judge, making mistakes and trying to learn my way. He was by then a senior judge, and he went out of his way to be helpful, to overlook my mistakes, and at the same time guide me in those early years of practicing law.
All of my father's decisions that went on appeal, none were overturned. None.
Yeah, so here we have an attorney who became the judge, and his wife was the teacher that was preparing young minds on the campus of Savannah State College, now university.
She was competent, she was intelligent, but most of all, she was caring. She cared about her work, she cared about her students.
I know for a fact that she used to invite kids over to her house on the weekends, sort of for makeup work, to make certain that they stayed on track, to make certain they got their grades up. I don't know how much of that goes on today.
What I remember most is the fact that she became the first African American to serve on the Airport Commission. And she made a real impression on everybody on that Airport Commission.
I had 4 different chairmen. And I don't care if all of them heard it, she was definitely my favorite. And I think she did more for the airport during that period of time than all the others put together, because she really helped us get on a stable course in a business that she knew really nothing about.
She had her impact, and all you have to do is fly in and out of Savannah. You know, somebody had to make those decisions to build and expand that airport.
Ida was the commission chairman at the time, and we were trying to get the contract done with Delta. We had to have Delta's approval because they were the majority carrier at the airport. And the Delta guy was getting a little pushy with things and everything else, and Ida had sit through the meeting for a long period of time and said absolutely nothing. And then she looked the Delta guy in the eye and said, look, you be fair with us, we'll be fair with you. But I can tell you, we're going to get this terminal done with you or without you. And at that, the Delta's guy's demeanor changed, and he sat down and said, okay, let's see how we can do this.
Now, everybody said that she was a tough teacher, she was a tough negotiator, but she was such a fair and loving people. People just sort of adopted her as the mother that they would like to have.
You know, she was more than a mentor. She really was, like a guardian angel to sit there and said, oh, you're doing this right, but you might think about kind of easing off and doing it this way.
I'm gonna tell you, if Ida had to tell you what to itemize her accomplishments, I believe she put her family first.
Really amazing parents, honestly. And they were amazing grandparents as well.
The two of them worked together as a team.
First of all, I never heard them argue. They always kissed each other, good morning and goodbye.
They were both driven by their desire to see the Savannah community improve, both Gene and Ida.
Excellence drove my parents. Excellence.
I think Judge Gadsden would be most proud of how he was the role he played in integrating Savannah in a nonviolent way.
Jean did the politics, she did the education, she did the mentoring.
They were about improving the lives of other individuals in this community.
Ida was doing it on a different level by teaching our young people in education. Judge Gadsden was teaching us how to fight for our rights.
Thank you for all that you contributed to Savannah.